Shalom Aleichem Chevra. I'd love to share with you a Devar Torah from the Meshech Chochmah on this week's Parsha, Parshas Vayishlach. Yaakov Avinu is preparing for his meeting with his brother Esav, and he sends him the following message: Im Lavan Garti, that I've spent 20 years living with my uncle Lavan, and he says, Vayhili Shor v'Chamor Tzoin v'Eved v'Shivcha. I have accrued in my financial portfolio shor, oxen, chamor, donkeys, tzoin, sheep, eved v'shivcha, servants and maidservants. Asks the Meshech Chochmah, there was another type of animal that Yaakov Avinu owned that he doesn't add to this list, and that is the camel, the gomel, because we find he sent camels as a present to Esav. So why isn't the camel found in this list? Says the Meshech Chochmah, a beautiful understanding of what Yaakov Avinu means, and it's a very fundamental analysis of what it means to be a Jew. God created Adam Arishon. That initial creation was a man that was kulei tov, was completely good by nature. The Yetzer Hara, the evil inclination, was not part and parcel of the persona of Adam Arishon. It was something completely distinct and different. However, that didn't last long, because when Adam Arishon ate from the Eitz Hadas, Tov Ra, the tree of knowledge of good and bad, what happened is there was a total metamorphosis of Adam Arishon. He became a mixture of Tov Ra. That means he was a mishmash of good and evil, of Yetzer Tov and Yetzer Hara. The Yetzer Hara was now part of his persona. Says the Meshech Chochmah, the job of our patriarchs, Avraham and Yitzchak and Yaakov, was to bring man back to the level of Adam Arishon pre-sin. And historically, this is what happened. Avraham Avinu, who was a synthesis of Tov and Ra, tried to make the two elements distinct again. So he had two sons. He had Yitzchak, which he was hoping was Kulei Tov, completely good, and Yishmael, who was the opposite. However, there was still elements of Ra that were internally part of Yitzchak, and Yitzchak had to continue that project. And he had to have two sons. He had to have an Esav and a Yaakov. Yaakov was siphoned off Kulei Tov, and Yishmael was the element of Ra that was still within Yitzchak. Yitzchak succeeded in completely bringing man back to Adam Arishon pre-sin, because Yaakov Avinu needed no siphoning. Yaakov Avinu's 13 children were Kulei Tov. As Chazal say, Yaakov Avinu's mitosai, his bed was shlema, was complete, which means there was no internal Ra, internal evil left within the Shefatim, within the 12 tribes. And therefore, Klal Yisrael, who are the descendants of Yaakov Avinu in the 12 tribes, we are Kulei Tov again. We're completely good. The evil that exists is not part of us. It's completely and absolutely independent. However, the other Ummos Olam, the other nations of the world, are still in that confused state of Tov and Ra working together within them. Yaakov Avinu wants to tell this to Esav. You're my brother, I'm meeting you. But we really cannot coexist together because we're totally different animals. I'm a Kulei Tov animal with the Ra that I struggle with is completely independent. You, the Tov and Ra, is together in one entity. This is what Yaakov is saying in this message to his brother Esav. Im Lavan Gati, yes, I spent 20 years with a scallywag Uncle Lavan, but don't think that has ruined me. Taryag mitzvah shamati, I kept 613 mitzvahs. And therefore, what is my persona? Vayishli. There is to me, yes, there are forces of evil together with the forces of good, but they're totally independent. There's shor, there's chamor, and there's tzoin. What does he mean by that? We know that some animals are kosher, some animals are not. To be kosher, one needs two identifying features. An animal has to chew the cud and have split hooves. A shor has both of those kosher identifying features, and so does a sheep. A chamor has none of those identifying features. So Yaakov Avinu is saying, my struggle with the Yetzer Hara, the evil that I come in contact with, is not part of me. It's completely independent. My life is black and white. I have a life of shor and tzoin, which are completely good. And then there's also lurking in the background, but not within me, there's a chamor, which is completely bad. However, I'm not a camel, because a camel is one of the handful of animals that has one of the two identifying features, which means the persona of a gamal, of a camel, is a mixture of toiv and ra. It chews the cud. And that is the good element of the camel, but it doesn't have split hooves. And therefore the camel is a poster boy, like the pig, which has the split hooves but doesn't chew the cud, of an entity that is an internal confused entity, where the good and the bad are trying to coexist together, which makes for a very hard life. And therefore Yaakov doesn't add that animal to his list. He says, my persona is black and white, tzoin, shor, and chamor, clearly identifiable, what is good and what is bad. I'm not a camel. The rest of the nations of the world, including you, Esav, you're the camel. You're the camel and you're the chazir. You have a tzad toiv, because everything has to have a good element within it. But unfortunately, it's fighting day in, day out, 24/7 with the tzad ra that is together within him. And that's not me, says Yaakov Avinu.